In the rugged, untamed expanses of the American Southwest, where the law was often nothing more than a whispered promise and survival depended on cunning and grit, one name struck fear into settlers and lawmen alike: Billy the Kid. Born Henry McCarty, this seemingly unremarkable young man would etch his name into history as one of the most infamous outlaws of the Wild West. But who was he really? A cold-blooded killer, a misunderstood youth, or perhaps something in between? The legend of Billy the Kid is steeped in tales of rebellion, vengeance, and daring escapades. Some say he killed over 20 men before his 21st birthday, others argue his actual count was far fewer. Yet, the numbers hardly matter when the myths surrounding him have grown larger than life. His story isn't just about crime, it's a saga of desperation, survival, and the relentless pursuit of freedom in an era where the line between hero and villain often blurred. Imagine the scorching deserts of New Mexico, where dust storms sweep across desolate landscapes and danger lurks at every turn. This was the stage for Billy's short but electrifying life. Born into poverty, orphaned at a young age, and left to fend for himself, he found solace in his quick wit, disarming charm, and unmatched skill with a gun. But his journey from a troubled youth to a legendary outlaw was anything but straightforward. Billy lived in a time when the American frontier was a lawless battleground. Land disputes, cattle rustling, and political rivalries often erupted into violence, creating a perfect storm for someone like him to rise. While many saw him as a menace, others viewed him as a folk hero, standing up to corrupt authorities and fighting for survival in an unforgiving world. His actions sparked a war, a bloody conflict that would pit him against powerful enemies and define his legacy. But behind the myth lies a young man whose choices and circumstances paint a far more complex picture. What drove Billy to live on the edge of the law? Was he shaped by the harsh realities of frontier life, or was he destined for infamy? And how did this boy, barely out of his teens, come to symbolize both the romanticism and brutality of the Wild West? As we uncover the life and times of Billy the Kid, we'll explore the world that shaped him, the decisions that defined him, and the events that ultimately sealed his fate. From his humble beginnings to his dramatic rise as a notorious outlaw, and finally, to his untimely death, Billy's story is a testament to the raw, unforgiving nature of the American frontier. In the end, one question lingers: was Billy the Kid a victim of his circumstances, or did he willingly embrace the chaos that made him a legend? Buckle up as we journey through the turbulent life of the outlaw who became a symbol of the untamed Wild West, Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid, born Henry McCarty, entered the world on November 23, 1859, in the crowded slums of New York City. His parents, Catherine and Patrick McCarty, were Irish immigrants who had fled their homeland during the Great Famine, searching for a better life. Their arrival in America, however, did not bring the relief they had hoped for. Patrick passed away when Henry was still very young, leaving Catherine to raise him and his older brother Joseph alone. Life in the tenement-filled neighborhoods of New York was harsh, defined by poverty and struggle, but Catherine's resilience pushed her to seek a fresh start elsewhere. By the early 1870s, Catherine had relocated her small family to Indianapolis, where she worked tirelessly as a laundress to support her sons. It was here that she met and married William Antrim, a miner who offered the promise of stability. The family moved westward, eventually settling in the frontier town of Silver City, New Mexico. The wide-open spaces and raw edges of the town were a stark contrast to the claustrophobic streets of New York, but it offered hope for a new beginning. Young Henry attended school sporadically and quickly displayed an unexpected affinity for reading and learning. His teachers noted his intelligence, and despite limited formal education, he developed a sharp, resourceful mind. However, life in Silver City was far from easy. Catherine's health began to decline rapidly due to tuberculosis, a common and often fatal disease of the time. Her death in 1874 was a devastating blow to 14-year-old Henry, leaving him and his brother effectively orphaned. Their stepfather, William Antrim, showed little interest in taking care of them, focusing instead on his mining work. Abandoned and left to fend for himself, Henry was thrust into a harsh world that offered few opportunities for survival. Forced to navigate life on his own, Henry worked a series of menial jobs, including farmhand, cook, and dishwasher, to make ends meet. But the pressures of poverty and isolation soon pushed him toward a darker path. Silver City, like many frontier towns, was a place where crime thrived, and for a vulnerable teenager with few prospects, falling into bad company was almost inevitable. Henry's first recorded encounter with the law occurred in 1875 when he was arrested for stealing clothes from a local laundry. Though the crime was minor, it marked the beginning of his life outside the law. Fearing punishment, he escaped from jail, setting a pattern of defiance and resourcefulness that would define him for years to come. After his escape, Henry drifted through the Southwest, taking up various aliases and falling in with groups of cattle rustlers and petty criminals. He briefly worked honest jobs but found the allure of the outlaw life difficult to resist. By the age of 16, he had begun adopting the name Billy the Kid, a moniker that suited his youthful appearance and carefree charm. His ability to blend into different communities and win over those he met became one of his greatest strengths. Billy's charisma and quick wit made him popular among his peers, even as his criminal activities began to escalate. The transformation from a struggling orphan to a notorious outlaw was not immediate, but it was inevitable. As Billy moved across the rugged terrain of Arizona and New Mexico, he learned to ride, shoot, and survive in a world where lawlessness reigned. These were skills born of necessity, forged in an environment where life was often cheap, and survival depended on cunning and daring. The American frontier of the late 19th century was a land of opportunity for some, but a harsh and unforgiving place for many. The Southwest, in particular, was rife with tension, as cattle ranching, land disputes, and territorial conflicts created an atmosphere of constant upheaval. Billy grew up in this volatile environment, shaped by the challenges and contradictions of frontier life. The lack of a strong legal system meant that justice was often delivered at the barrel of a gun, and the line between hero and villain was blurred. For a young man like Billy, survival often meant bending or outright breaking the rules. The isolation and hardship of his early years instilled in him a fierce independence and a willingness to take risks that would later define his outlaw persona. By the time Billy reached his late teens, he had already endured a lifetime of hardship and loss. The death of his mother, the abandonment by his stepfather, and the relentless struggles of poverty had hardened him but also shaped his character. He was clever, resourceful, and unafraid of authority, traits that would soon propel him to infamy. Yet, beneath the surface, he remained a product of his circumstances, a boy thrust into a world that left little room for innocence or redemption. As he stepped further into the dangerous world of the Wild West, his transformation into one of history's most infamous outlaws was nearly complete. The boy who had once roamed the streets of Silver City was about to become a man whose name would be etched into the annals of American folklore. Billy the Kid's rise to prominence was a journey marked by a blend of charisma, circumstance, and the unforgiving world of the Wild West. By the late 1870s, he had drifted into Lincoln County, New Mexico, a rugged and sparsely populated region fraught with land disputes and power struggles. At the time, Lincoln County was under the control of a small group of wealthy merchants and ranchers, collectively known as the House. This powerful faction, led by Lawrence Murphy and James Dolan, monopolized the area's economy, particularly the cattle trade. Their dominance bred resentment among local ranchers, creating fertile ground for conflict. Billy, still in his late teens, entered this volatile environment with little more than his quick wit and skill with a gun. He found work as a ranch hand and cowboy, often drifting between employers. His association with the Tunstall-McSween faction, rivals of the House, proved pivotal in his transformation from a petty outlaw into a significant player in the region's power struggles. John Tunstall, a young and idealistic Englishman, sought to break the House's stranglehold on Lincoln County by establishing his own cattle business. Tunstall's opposition to Murphy and Dolan made him a target, but it also earned him the loyalty of men like Billy, who admired his defiance and vision. Billy's relationship with Tunstall was more than just professional. Tunstall treated him with respect and fairness, something Billy rarely experienced in his tumultuous life. This bond deepened Billy's loyalty and gave him a sense of purpose beyond petty crime. However, this allegiance placed him squarely in the middle of the brewing conflict known as the Lincoln County War. Tensions between the rival factions escalated into violence when Tunstall was ambushed and killed by men loyal to the House in February 1878. This act of brutality deeply affected Billy, fueling a desire for revenge that would define the next phase of his life. The Lincoln County War quickly spiraled into chaos. Billy joined the Regulators, a group of Tunstall loyalists determined to bring his killers to justice. Over the next several months, the Regulators engaged in a series of bloody skirmishes with the House's supporters, each side vying for dominance in Lincoln County. Billy's role in these events was significant, as his skill with a gun and natural leadership qualities earned him a reputation as a fearless fighter. His involvement in the killing of Sheriff William Brady, a staunch ally of the House, cemented his status as a wanted man. Although the act was motivated by a desire for justice, it marked Billy as a criminal in the eyes of the law. The culmination of the Lincoln County War came in July 1878 with the infamous Battle of Lincoln. This 5-day siege saw the regulators barricaded in McSween's home, surrounded by a posse loyal to the House. The standoff ended in tragedy when McSween was killed, and the regulators were forced to flee. The aftermath of the war left Lincoln County in ruins, with neither side achieving a decisive victory. For Billy, the loss of Tunstall and McSween was a personal and ideological defeat. Yet, it also solidified his reputation as a formidable figure in the Wild West. In the months following the Lincoln County War, Billy found himself increasingly isolated. The regulators disbanded, and many of his allies either fled or were killed. Billy, however, remained in New Mexico, living on the fringes of society and continuing to engage in cattle rustling and other outlaw activities. His charm and knack for making friends ensured he always had allies, but his growing notoriety made him a target for law enforcement. Despite this, Billy's life was not without moments of levity. Accounts from this period describe him as a charismatic and likable figure, known for his sense of humor and love of music. He often played the guitar at local dances, endearing himself to the local community even as he evaded capture. Billy's rise to prominence was further fueled by his ability to outwit his pursuers. His legendary escape from the Lincoln County Courthouse in April 1881 is a prime example of his cunning and audacity. Arrested and sentenced to hang for the murder of Sheriff Brady, Billy was held under heavy guard in the courthouse. On the eve of his execution, he managed to overpower his guards, killing 2 deputies in the process, and escaped on horseback. This daring feat only added to his legend, earning him the admiration of many and the relentless pursuit of lawmen. During this time, Billy's notoriety spread beyond New Mexico, thanks in part to sensationalized newspaper accounts that painted him as both a ruthless killer and a folk hero. The public's fascination with his exploits was fueled by his youth and the romanticized image of the outlaw in American culture. To some, he was a symbol of rebellion against corrupt authority. To others, he was a dangerous criminal who needed to be stopped. This duality in perception made Billy one of the most enigmatic figures of his time. As his fame grew, so did the determination of his enemies to capture him. Pat Garrett, a former friend turned lawman, was appointed sheriff of Lincoln County with the specific goal of bringing Billy to justice. Garrett's relentless pursuit of Billy became a cat-and-mouse game that captivated the nation. Their relationship, marked by a mix of mutual respect and animosity, added another layer of complexity to Billy's story. Garrett understood Billy's resourcefulness and charisma, making his eventual capture a matter of both professional duty and personal challenge. By the early 1880s, Billy the Kid had become a household name, his life a mix of triumphs and tragedies that mirrored the tumultuous era in which he lived. His rise to prominence was not just the story of an outlaw but a reflection of the broader struggles and contradictions of the American frontier. In a world where lawlessness and ambition often went hand in hand, Billy's journey from a troubled youth to a legendary figure was both inevitable and extraordinary. As he continued to evade capture and defy authority, he became a symbol of the Wild West itself, a land of opportunity, danger, and unyielding spirit. The life of Billy the Kid was marked by a series of dramatic and often violent events that painted a vivid picture of the lawlessness of the American frontier. These defining moments showcased his cunning, bravery, and often the brutal reality of survival in a chaotic world. His rise to infamy, involvement in the Lincoln County War, daring escapes, and final encounters with law enforcement not only shaped his personal legacy but also became emblematic of the Wild West's turbulent era. The Lincoln County War was the turning point in Billy the Kid's life and a critical chapter in the history of New Mexico. This brutal conflict began with the murder of John Tunstall, a young Englishman who had hired Billy and others to protect his ranch from the influence of the Murphy-Dolan faction, also known as the House. The House, a powerful and corrupt network of merchants and politicians, dominated Lincoln County's economy and saw Tunstall as a threat. His death in February 1878 set off a violent chain of events that pitted the regulators, a group loyal to Tunstall, against the Murphy-Dolan forces. Billy's allegiance to Tunstall wasn't just about loyalty to his employer, it was deeply personal. Tunstall had treated him with respect and dignity, unlike most authority figures in Billy's life. The regulators sought justice for Tunstall's murder, and Billy played a central role in their campaign. One of the earliest acts of retaliation was the killing of Sheriff William Brady, who was closely allied with the House and suspected of complicity in Tunstall's murder. On April 1, 1878, Billy and several regulators ambushed Brady and his deputies in the streets of Lincoln. The gunfire left Brady and another deputy dead, but it also made Billy and his comrades fugitives in the eyes of the law. This act of defiance was not just a bid for justice but also a declaration of war against the corrupt powers that dominated Lincoln County. The conflict quickly escalated into a series of violent confrontations, with both sides committing acts of retribution and brutality. One notable event was the shootout at Blazer's Mill, where the regulators encountered Buckshot Roberts, a well-known bounty hunter aligned with the House. Roberts, despite being heavily outnumbered, managed to hold off the regulators in a fierce gunfight. Billy and his companions eventually overcame him, but not without suffering casualties of their own. This incident highlighted the chaotic and often unpredictable nature of the conflict, where even the most seasoned gunfighters faced grave danger. The climax of the Lincoln County War came in July 1878 during the Battle of Lincoln, a 5-day siege that marked the culmination of the feud. Billy and the regulators found themselves trapped in the home of Alexander McSween, another leader of their faction, as they faced a heavily armed posse loyal to the House. The standoff was marked by relentless gunfire and rising tensions. On the 5th day, the attackers set fire to the building, forcing the regulators to make a desperate escape. As the flames consumed the house, McSween was killed in the chaos, and the regulators scattered into the wilderness. For Billy, the battle was a devastating loss, not just strategically but also personally, as McSween's death left the regulators leaderless and demoralized. The Lincoln County War officially ended in the months that followed, but its repercussions would haunt Billy for the rest of his life. After the war, Billy found himself on the run, labeled a notorious outlaw by both the law and public opinion. He turned to cattle rustling and other criminal activities to survive, often working with a small group of trusted associates. One of the most infamous events during this period was the killing of Joe Grant in a saloon altercation. Grant, drunk and boasting about his intent to kill Billy, became the victim of the outlaw's quick wit and reflexes. Sensing danger, Billy cleverly rotated the cylinder of Grant's revolver so that the first chamber was empty. When Grant attempted to shoot him, the gun misfired, giving Billy the split-second advantage to fire back and kill his would-be assassin. This episode not only demonstrated Billy's resourcefulness but also added to his reputation as a man who could outthink and outgun any opponent. Billy's notoriety made him a prime target for law enforcement, and he was eventually captured and tried for the murder of Sheriff Brady. Sentenced to hang, he was held in the Lincoln County Courthouse under heavy guard. Yet, even in this seemingly hopeless situation, Billy managed to stage one of the most daring escapes in frontier history. On April 28, 1881, while under the watch of 2 deputies, Billy managed to seize a firearm, killing both guards in the ensuing chaos. He then secured a horse and rode out of Lincoln, leaving behind a trail of awe and infamy. This dramatic escape not only humiliated his captors but also solidified his legendary status as a cunning and fearless outlaw. The final chapter of Billy's life was dominated by his relentless pursuit by Pat Garrett, the newly appointed sheriff of Lincoln County. Garrett, once a friend of Billy's, was determined to capture him and restore order to the region. The manhunt was a tense game of cat and mouse, with Billy using his deep knowledge of the local terrain to evade capture. Despite several near misses, Garrett's resolve never wavered. The pursuit culminated on the night of July 14, 1881, at Fort Sumner, where Garrett ambushed Billy in the home of Pete Maxwell. In the darkened room, Garrett fired a single fatal shot, bringing an abrupt end to the outlaw's life at just 21 years old. These major events and conflicts in Billy the Kid's life encapsulate the larger struggles of the Wild West. A world defined by lawlessness, personal vendettas, and the fight for survival. His actions, both celebrated and condemned, were shaped by the harsh realities of his time. Each confrontation, escape, and tragedy added another layer to the legend of Billy the Kid, ensuring that his story would endure long after his death. His life remains a testament to the complexities of frontier justice and the enduring allure of the outlaw mythos in American history. The climax of Billy the Kid's life represents the height of his infamy and the most defining moments of his tragic journey. It was a culmination of relentless pursuits, dramatic confrontations, and the tension between his outlaw persona and his more human side. As the law closed in, his story evolved into a dramatic struggle for survival against overwhelming odds, showcasing both his resourcefulness and vulnerability. In the months following his daring escape from the Lincoln County Courthouse, Billy became a legend across the frontier. Newspapers sensationalized his exploits, turning him into a larger-than-life figure. For some, he was a symbol of defiance against corruption and the oppressive powers of the establishment. For others, he was a ruthless criminal who needed to be stopped. Either way, the pressure to capture or kill him mounted, and his actions became increasingly scrutinized. He was a fugitive with a price on his head, living on borrowed time as Pat Garrett intensified his efforts to track him down. Billy's ability to navigate the harsh landscapes of New Mexico gave him an advantage in evading capture. He relied on a network of friends and sympathizers, often hiding in remote ranches or among communities who saw him as a hero. His charm and youthful charisma won him allies, even as his notoriety grew. However, this lifestyle also isolated him, forcing him to constantly move and remain on high alert. The weight of being hunted began to take a toll, both physically and mentally. Despite his outward confidence, the strain of always looking over his shoulder must have been immense. As Garrett's posse closed in, Billy's options became increasingly limited. He was aware that the sheriff knew his habits, hiding spots, and associates. The familiarity between the two men added an ironic layer of complexity to their confrontation. Garrett, once a friend and confidant, had become the architect of Billy's demise. The dynamic between the hunter and the hunted was deeply personal, driven as much by duty as by the betrayal Billy likely felt. Garrett's relentless pursuit wasn't just about capturing an outlaw, it was also about cementing his own reputation as the lawman who brought down the infamous Billy the Kid. The final act of Billy's life unfolded at Fort Sumner, a place he had often sought refuge. It was a fitting location for the climax of his story, as it represented both a sanctuary and a trap. On the night of July 14, 1881, Garrett received a tip that Billy was staying at the home of Pete Maxwell, a rancher and mutual acquaintance. Garrett, ever meticulous, planned the ambush with precision. Accompanied by his deputies, he approached the house under cover of darkness, knowing that any mistake could cost him his life. Inside the Maxwell home, Billy was unaware of the danger that awaited him. Accounts of that night vary, but the most accepted version suggests that he entered Maxwell's room to speak with him, possibly to inquire about nearby lawmen. In the dim light, Billy noticed a figure and instinctively asked, "Quien es?" "Who is it?" Recognizing Billy's voice, Garrett fired his revolver, the shot hitting Billy in the chest. He collapsed to the floor, dying almost instantly. The swift and brutal end to Billy's life was as shocking as it was anticlimactic, leaving many to wonder if he truly deserved such a fate. Garrett's decision to kill Billy rather than capture him alive has been the subject of much debate. Some argue that Garrett acted out of fear for his own life, knowing Billy's reputation as a skilled and quick gunfighter. Others suggest that Garrett may have been pressured by authorities or influenced by the bounty on Billy's head. Whatever the motive, the outcome was the same. Billy the Kid, the legendary outlaw, was dead at just 21 years old. His death marked the end of an era and the beginning of his transformation into a cultural icon. The aftermath of Billy's death was as dramatic as his life. News of his demise spread quickly, with newspapers across the country reporting on the event. While some celebrated the end of a notorious criminal, others mourned the loss of a misunderstood youth caught up in the violence of his time. Garrett's role in Billy's death also sparked controversy. Though he gained fame and recognition, he was criticized by some for the way he handled the situation. In the years that followed, Garrett wrote a book about his experiences with Billy, further cementing the outlaw's place in history and myth. Billy's death also left behind unanswered questions and lingering mysteries. Rumors persisted that he had survived, fueled by conflicting accounts and the absence of definitive proof. Some claimed to have seen him alive years after the supposed shooting, while others insisted that Garrett had staged the event. These theories, though unlikely, added to the aura of intrigue surrounding Billy's life and death, ensuring that his story would continue to captivate audiences for generations. The climax of Billy the Kid's life is a powerful reflection of the Wild West's volatile and unpredictable nature. It captures the tension between law and lawlessness, personal loyalty and betrayal, and the fine line between survival and destruction. In his final moments, Billy embodied both the hero and the villain, the hunted and the hunter, leaving behind a legacy that defies simple categorization. His death, though tragic, was not the end of his story. It was the beginning of a legend that would endure in the hearts and minds of people around the world. The resolution of Billy the Kid's story did not bring the sense of closure one might expect from the death of such a notorious figure. Instead, it opened the door to a mix of mourning, controversy, and myth-making. While his death marked the end of his outlaw life, it signaled the beginning of a new chapter in which his legend grew far beyond the reality of his short, tumultuous existence. For Pat Garrett, Billy's death was supposed to be a crowning achievement, but it became a double-edged sword that shaped his life in complex ways. Following Billy's death, the town of Fort Sumner was abuzz with activity. News of the event spread quickly, drawing curious onlookers, supporters, and critics. Billy's body was laid out for public viewing, and many locals came to pay their respects, or in some cases, to confirm that the infamous outlaw was truly gone. Witnesses described him as looking serene in death, a stark contrast to the chaotic life he had led. Despite his reputation as a cold-blooded killer, many in the community saw him as a victim of circumstance, a young man shaped by the brutality of his environment. His burial, conducted hastily the day after his death, took place at Fort Sumner Cemetery. He was laid to rest alongside his friends and fellow outlaws, Tom O'Folliard and Charlie Beaudre, who had also fallen victim to the violence of the Lincoln County War. For Pat Garrett, the man responsible for Billy's death, the aftermath was far from a simple victory. Initially, he was hailed as a hero by law enforcement and political figures who had been eager to see Billy brought to justice. Garrett collected the reward money for Billy's capture, which was a significant sum at the time. However, the public's reaction was divided. Many saw Garrett's actions as necessary to restore law and order, but others criticized him for the manner in which he killed Billy. The lack of a fair trial and the perception that Garrett had acted dishonorably tarnished his reputation in certain circles. In the years that followed, Garrett struggled to maintain the fame and respect he had gained from killing Billy. He attempted to capitalize on the notoriety of the event by publishing a book titled The Authentic Life of Billy the Kid, co-written with journalist Ash Upson. The book aimed to solidify Garrett's version of the events, presenting Billy as a dangerous criminal and Garrett as the steadfast lawman who ended his reign of terror. However, the book failed to achieve commercial success, and its accuracy was questioned by those who knew Billy personally. Many saw it as an attempt by Garrett to control the narrative and cement his legacy, but it only added to the controversy surrounding both men. Garrett's later years were marked by hardship and decline. Despite his fame, he struggled financially and found it difficult to secure stable employment. His role in Billy's death, which had once been his greatest accomplishment, became a burden. He faced criticism and even threats from those who viewed Billy as a folk hero. Garrett's attempts to run for political office were unsuccessful, and his career as a lawman did not bring the stability he sought. In a tragic twist of fate, Garrett himself met a violent end in 1908 when he was shot and killed under mysterious circumstances, leaving behind a legacy as complicated as the one he had tried to shape for Billy. While Garrett's star faded, Billy's legend only grew. Stories about his life and death took on a life of their own, fueled by the public's fascination with the Wild West and its larger-than-life characters. Accounts of Billy's exploits were embellished in dime novels, newspapers, and oral traditions, turning him into a symbol of rebellion and freedom. He became a cultural icon, representing the spirit of the untamed frontier and the complexities of justice in a lawless land. One of the most enduring aspects of Billy's legacy is the mystery surrounding his death. Almost immediately after the shooting, rumors began to circulate that Billy had survived and escaped. Some claimed that Garrett had killed the wrong man, while others believed that Billy had faked his death with Garrett's help. Over the years, numerous individuals came forward claiming to be Billy the Kid, each with their own version of how they had evaded capture. These claims, while unsubstantiated, kept the story alive and added an air of intrigue that captivated the public imagination. The debate over Billy's death has persisted into modern times, with historians, authors, and filmmakers exploring the possibility that he might have lived beyond 1881. In the late 20th century, forensic scientists and historians attempted to exhume the remains of Billy and his associates to conduct DNA analysis, but these efforts were thwarted by legal and logistical challenges. The lack of definitive evidence has allowed the myth of Billy the Kid to endure, with some preferring to believe in the romantic notion that he outsmarted his enemies and lived out his days in anonymity. Billy's impact on popular culture cannot be overstated. He has been the subject of countless books, films, songs, and artworks, each offering a different perspective on his life and legacy. From Hollywood blockbusters to folk ballads, Billy has been portrayed as everything from a ruthless killer to a misunderstood anti-hero. These interpretations reflect the changing values and attitudes of society, with each generation finding new meaning in his story. The legacy of Billy the Kid also serves as a lens through which to examine the broader themes of the American West. His life highlights the harsh realities of frontier life, where survival often meant blurring the lines between right and wrong. It also underscores the power of storytelling in shaping history, as the myths surrounding Billy have often overshadowed the historical facts. In many ways, Billy represents the duality of the West itself, a place of opportunity and danger, law and lawlessness, freedom and constraint. In the resolution of Billy the Kid's story, we find not only the end of a life but the beginning of a legend. His death may have brought an end to his physical existence, but it marked the start of his immortality as a cultural icon. Through the tales told about him, Billy lives on, a reminder of the complexities of human nature and the enduring allure of the untamed frontier. His story continues to captivate audiences, offering a glimpse into a world where the line between hero and villain is often blurred. In death, as in life, Billy the Kid remains a figure of fascination, a symbol of the Wild West's enduring legacy. Billy the Kid's legacy is a fascinating blend of fact and fiction, rooted in his brief but eventful life and the cultural mythology that surrounded him after his death. The Kid has become an enduring symbol of the American West, his story resonating with themes of rebellion, survival, and the moral ambiguity of justice on the frontier. While his actions during his lifetime left a mark on those directly involved in his story, his influence has extended far beyond the late 19th century, shaping cultural narratives and historical discussions in profound ways. Billy's rise from an unknown figure to a cultural icon can be traced back to the immediate aftermath of his death. Within days of Pat Garrett shooting him in Fort Sumner, the story of the infamous outlaw began to take on a life of its own. Newspapers, eager to sell sensational stories, exaggerated his exploits, turning him into a larger-than-life character. While some articles painted him as a ruthless killer, others portrayed him as a misunderstood youth who had been forced into a life of crime by harsh circumstances. This duality in how he was perceived became a key aspect of his legend, appealing to different audiences and ensuring that his story would endure. One of the most significant factors contributing to Billy's legacy was the publication of Pat Garrett's The Authentic Life of Billy the Kid in 1882, less than a year after his death. Although intended to solidify Garrett's reputation as a lawman and present Billy as a criminal, the book inadvertently fueled public fascination with the Kid. The narrative, filled with dramatic details and moralizing commentary, painted a vivid picture of Billy's life, even if some elements were exaggerated or outright fabricated. For many readers, the book humanized Billy, highlighting his charisma, cleverness, and resilience in the face of adversity. Instead of quelling interest in the outlaw, it intensified it, laying the groundwork for the mythological status Billy would achieve in the decades to come. The romanticization of Billy the Kid gained momentum in the early 20th century, as the Wild West became a nostalgic symbol of a bygone era. Writers, artists, and filmmakers began to reimagine his story, focusing on the themes of individualism and resistance to authority that resonated with changing societal values. In dime novels, songs, and later, movies, Billy was often depicted as a tragic hero, a rebel who fought against corrupt systems and stood up for the downtrodden. These portrayals, though far removed from historical accuracy, cemented his place in popular culture and ensured that his name would be remembered long after the events of his life had faded into history. Billy's story has been particularly influential in the realm of film. Starting with The Outlaw, 1943, directed by Howard Hughes, and continuing with iconic westerns like Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, 1973, by Sam Peckinpah, his life has been depicted on screen in various ways. These films have not only entertained audiences but also shaped perceptions of Billy and the Old West. Directors and writers often used Billy's story to explore broader themes, such as the clash between freedom and civilization or the moral complexities of justice. The Kid became a vehicle for storytelling that reflected the concerns and values of the times in which these films were made. In addition to his presence in film, Billy the Kid has inspired numerous works of literature and music. From Michael Ondaatje's The Collected Works of Billy the Kid to Bob Dylan's songs on the soundtrack of Peckinpah's film, artists have used his story to explore themes of identity, myth-making, and rebellion. Dylan's work, in particular, highlights the connection between Billy's legacy and the countercultural movements of the 20th century. The outlaw's defiance of authority and his ability to captivate people's imaginations made him a natural figure for those challenging societal norms and seeking to redefine heroism. Despite the romanticized portrayals, historians have sought to separate fact from fiction in understanding Billy the Kid's life and impact. His story offers valuable insights into the social and political dynamics of the American West during a time of rapid change. Billy's involvement in the Lincoln County War, for example, sheds light on the intense conflicts between rival economic and political factions in frontier communities. The war was not just a personal story of vengeance and survival, but also a reflection of the broader struggles over land, resources, and power in a lawless environment. By studying Billy's life, historians can better understand the challenges faced by individuals living in a world where justice was often a matter of personal interpretation. Billy's legacy also raises important questions about the construction of historical memory and the role of myth in shaping our understanding of the past. His transformation from a real person into a cultural icon illustrates how stories are shaped by the needs and desires of the societies that tell them. In Billy's case, the myths surrounding his life have often overshadowed the reality, turning him into a symbol that reflects more about the storytellers than about the man himself. This phenomenon is not unique to Billy the Kid, but is a common feature of how history is remembered and retold. One of the most enduring aspects of Billy's legacy is the ongoing debate about his death and the possibility that he may have survived. While the evidence overwhelmingly supports the conclusion that Pat Garrett killed him in 1881, the rumors and conspiracy theories that arose in the aftermath have kept the mystery alive. Claims from individuals like Brushy Bill Roberts, who asserted that he was Billy the Kid decades later, have added layers of intrigue to the story. These theories, while often dismissed by historians, highlight the public's unwillingness to let go of a figure who represents so much more than just a historical outlaw. Billy's influence extends beyond popular culture and into the realm of tourism and local identity. In New Mexico, where much of his life unfolded, towns like Fort Sumner and Lincoln have embraced their connection to the Kid, using his story to attract visitors and preserve their heritage. Museums, reenactments, and historical markers celebrate his life and the broader history of the region, making Billy the Kid an integral part of the cultural and economic fabric of the area. For many, he is not just a figure from the past but a symbol of their community's history and resilience. In the broader context of American history, Billy the Kid represents the complexities of the frontier experience. His story embodies the tension between lawlessness and order, individuality and community, and myth and reality. As a historical figure, he challenges us to think critically about the narratives we create and the values we project onto the past. As a cultural icon, he continues to inspire, entertain, and provoke, reminding us of the enduring power of stories to shape our understanding of ourselves and our world. Billy the Kid's legacy is a testament to the enduring fascination with the Wild West and the human desire to find meaning in the lives of those who lived on the edges of society. Whether seen as a villain, a hero, or something in between, Billy remains a figure of endless intrigue, his story a mirror reflecting the hopes, fears, and contradictions of the American experience. Through the countless retellings of his life, he has become immortal, a symbol of both the past and the timeless struggle for freedom and identity. Billy the Kid's life and legacy have left an indelible mark on American history, blending fact and fiction in a way that has captivated generations. From his humble beginnings to his rise as one of the most infamous outlaws of the Old West, Billy's story continues to resonate with those who seek to understand the complexities of the frontier and the myths that shaped the American experience. Though his life was brief and filled with violence, it sparked a legacy that transcended time, creating a lasting impact on both historical understanding and popular culture. At the heart of Billy the Kid's story is a paradox that has kept people fascinated for over a century. Was he a mere criminal, or was he a victim of circumstance and injustice? This ambiguity has been central to the way in which Billy has been remembered. On one hand, he was a lawless figure who took part in a series of violent conflicts, including the infamous Lincoln County War, which led to numerous deaths and contributed to his reputation as a ruthless outlaw. On the other hand, his youth, his ability to survive in the harsh world of the frontier, and his role as a symbol of rebellion against authority have made him a figure of mythic proportions, one whose story evokes sympathy as much as it does fear. The mythology surrounding Billy the Kid has contributed to his status as a symbol of defiance. In the context of the American frontier, where lawlessness was often the norm and survival was a constant struggle, Billy came to embody the spirit of resistance. He represented the idea of fighting back against an oppressive system, even if that fight was criminal in nature. Over the years, his image has been both glorified and vilified, but it remains a powerful symbol of individualism and resistance to authority that continues to resonate in American culture. Moreover, Billy's legacy has been shaped by the many myths and legends that have surrounded him, often obscuring the truth of his life. The stories about him, fueled by newspaper sensationalism and embellished by later writers and filmmakers, have made it difficult to separate fact from fiction. Nevertheless, this blending of history and myth has contributed to his lasting appeal. As a result, Billy has become a larger-than-life figure, whose story reflects more about the times and the people who tell it than about his own life. His legend has served as a lens through which the American West and the broader concept of heroism, lawlessness, and justice have been interpreted. Billy the Kid's impact on American culture cannot be overstated. He has become an enduring icon, inspiring countless films, songs, books, and works of art. His story has been retold and reimagined in ways that speak to various generations' concerns and values. In many of these retellings, Billy is not just an outlaw but a tragic hero, a figure who challenges the very idea of what it means to be a hero in a lawless society. He is a symbol of youth, rebellion, and the quest for freedom, traits that resonate deeply in a culture that often celebrates the individual against the system. While Billy the Kid's place in American mythology is secure, his true legacy is also rooted in the historical context in which he lived. His story offers insights into the complexities of the American West, where issues of land, power, and justice were often inextricably linked. The Lincoln County War, in which Billy was deeply involved, serves as a reminder of the harsh realities of frontier life, where the law was often arbitrary, and justice was determined by personal allegiances and violence rather than by courts and due process. His actions, though often criminal, were not just the result of personal choice but also of the chaotic environment in which he was raised. In conclusion, Billy the Kid remains an enigmatic and iconic figure whose life and legacy continue to spark debate. Whether viewed as a product of his time or as a symbol of something larger, his story offers valuable lessons about the nature of myth and history. Billy's tale reminds us of the power of storytelling to shape our understanding of the past and to create heroes and villains out of real people. In a sense, Billy the Kid represents the dual nature of the American experience itself, a struggle between order and chaos, law and rebellion, and myth and reality. His legacy, shaped by the stories told about him, will continue to captivate and challenge our understanding of the American West for generations to come.